but I understand there was a good turnout.
Yes.
So glad to hear it. If you haven't already, I think the sign-in is at the back of the room, so any visitors, if you can make sure that you sign in on your way out. If you didn't do it on your way in, we'd appreciate it. The first action item for today is the approval of the November 4th minutes. I have a motion to approve.
Motion.
Jim?
Second.
All right, thank you. We've had a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed?
Aye.
Thank you, Denise. Larry, are you on?
I'm on and I say aye.
All right, thank you.
For it, not against it, I'm for it, sorry.
All right,
I
thanks.
got you.
Okay, so the meetings, or the minutes have been approved. And at this point, we are going to look at the board meetings schedule. I think we were having trouble pulling it up at the last meeting. So if you want to take a look, I don't know if there's discussion, I don't know if people,
My only question is, what time will the other meetings start?
typically at 9.
9?
I don't think any are probably outside of that.
Okay.
Unless you want to start later.
Yeah,
if
it's
you're
up to you.
traveling.
It's up
That's
to you
up to
all.
you guys. If you're traveling, if you want to come later, you start at 10.
I've never had that choice before.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what I
there's-
do.
You guys are the board.
It's up to you.
Up to you guys if you want that choice.
10? 9? 10?
I'm
I'm fine, whatever. What does Larry think?
Larry? Denise, do you have a preference?
As far, I'm sorry, I missed the question. Are we asking about start time at 9 o'clock or what?
Yeah, 9 or 10 has been proposed.
Yeah, I have no problem with 10 o'clock. That's fine with me.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you have a preference? Sounds like we've got 2 votes for 10, so
10?
we'll go ahead and do 10.
Sounds good.
All right. It looks like Director Skinner is up.
All right.
For the welcome. Thank you.
All right.
It's an action.
Oh,
It is an action
make a
to, to approve the whole schedule?
Yep.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve
Motion.
the 23 schedule? Second?
Second?
Thank you, Lisa. Having a motion and a second, all those in favor, aye, please?
Aye.
And those opposed?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. All right, the schedule has been approved. Yeah.
now we're
Sorry
ready.
about
All
that.
right.
Thanks.
Good morning, board members.
Good morning.
Nice to see you. It's been a few months. Hope you enjoyed your holidays. We missed you. So today, I'm gonna apologize in advance. I have like some kind of allergy or something, so if I'm sneezing and stuff, I just apologize. But you all have seen me in a much far worse condition.
I'm gonna
So,
say,
You guys hear me?
get closer to the phone. I
Yep.
can't.
Okay, Larry, can you hear me now? Not
I
yelling now.
can't, please.
Okay, well, it's nice and warm in Florida.
I have got you so that, I would be very funny if I
All right.
Go ahead.
Thank you, thank you. So many of you probably are aware, so the governor introduced her alignment bill yesterday for all executive branch agencies. If you had time, it's about 1,500 pages. I think we're about 30 or 40 of them potentially. So we're a smaller section of that, most of it's PHS. So I want to give you a little background first. So how this came to be is that the state of Iowa conducted a comprehensive assessment and evaluation of all executive branch agencies. They wanted to see if there was places that they could have efficiencies, align resources, have more operational alignment between all the various executive branch agencies. So what I can tell you, and if I get this stat wrong, Nick, let me know, I always seem to mess this up, but, so the governor's proposing going from 36 cabinet members down to 16 in this alignment bill. states around us, that's very common. She has a very large cabinet for the size of the state. I think Illinois has 24. They're a larger state than us. So the goal of this assessment evaluation was really to just improve the efficiency and effectiveness, and importantly, elevate services to Iowans. So again, saying that she's looking at this as a broad, alignment, so Iowans can get provided better, more efficient services. So during this time, when they're doing the assessment evaluation, there was a recommendation was made to merge community-based corrections into the Department of Corrections. And that's creating a single correctional system that oversees the full continuum of community supervision, incarceration, and reentry. So we're saying we're developing a more seamless correctional organization. Well, I'll tell you, and you guys probably know this, but I just want to make sure you're aware, the CBs receive nearly 80% of their funding from the state. And each district operates independently, and they actually report to their own board. So they don't necessarily report to us, they have their own board that hires and fires the directors and approves policies. So we have been set up this way for 40 years. Okay, think about that. We've been set up this way for 40 years. We are the only state in the country set up this way. So most states are a unified system, and what we know, and we're more of a bifurcated system, unified systems, but according to research, get better outcomes. You're all on the same team. So with a strong connection between the CBCs and the Department of Corrections, what we've seen in the past, and we've talked about this before, is that with the CBCs, there's been, operational inconsistencies around impacting parole, work release placement, supervision practices, treatment availability, data sharing, revocations, community partnerships, and residential programming. So those are just a few of the inconsistencies we've just seen over the years. So centralizing all of corrections can increase the efficiencies by reducing the variation of policy and procedures and practices, make us more streamlined. And having this type of alignment will improve service delivery, ensuring consistent policies and procedures, leading to better outcomes. So aligning CBCs with the DOC, our teams can work together. We can develop and implement evidence-based practices, do that more consistently, increase the amount of evidence-based practices we have in order to decrease recidivism, increase public safety. These things will lead to with us aligning with the CBCs, are going to lead to better outcomes. So merging CBCs and DOCs will also create greater efficiencies that we would believe will result in some cost savings as well, both immediately and over time. So the DOC focus, sorry guys, Rebecca, you're probably like, oh God. So DOC focus on public safety will basically our big focus on public safety. Will drive risk reduction, improve evidence-based practices, accountability, increase levels of treatment, and better manage residential beds that we have. We have 21 residential facilities across our state. So there will also be many benefits to this I want to share with you all. I'm just going to name a few, not all of them. Improvements can be made around case management, quality improvement, consistent data collection and the use of analytics, like the early alert system, consistency in professional development, training statewide, improved consistency in recruitment and retention, hiring, job classification, promotion, onboarding, and retention process. Also, which Jim will listen to music to your ears, what we'd like to do in the future is have alignment and expand our post-secondary education or apprenticeship programs in our CBCs. Because as you know, the research tells us that those that complete apprenticeship programs versus those that don't have reduced recidivism. So we want to up our game not only on the prison side, we want to up our game on the CBC side as well. So let me talk about some of the public safety benefits. DOC will be able to provide consistency in supervision, placement, work releases, and other parole and probation services, reducing recidivism and providing equal justice throughout the state. Increased data sharing with law enforcement and public safety entities will provide better opportunities for collaboration. Implementing operational standards will elevate staff training in personal safety, situational awareness, risk assessment, and core correctional practices, improving consistency and accountability. Now what I want to tell you with what this alignment is not. There will be no layoffs will occur due to this alignment. There'll be no layoffs. And that's one thing I think I've heard consistently is that whenever you talk about an alignment or merger, first thing people think about is that, am I going to lose my job? There is no layoffs planned for this. The districts will stay intact, okay? That's a really important piece. Programs and services will not be discontinued. The changes, when the bill passes, changes are not going to occur immediately. It's going to take time and planning. The bill has to go through its legislative process, as you all know. So, by aligning, my last few comments, by aligning CBCs and DOC, is it hard to take me serious when I'm doing this? Sorry. By aligning CBCs and DOC, our teams can work together as one system. To develop and implement evidence-based practices to shore up evidence-based standards, not only in our prisons, but in our CBCs as well, to improve programming, make a more robust programming out in our CBCs. Right now, they get very minimal programming, internal programming, if you want to shore that up. Promote equal justice, so if you go to any district in this state, you're going to get similar services, and you're getting equal justice. It's going to enhance public safety. So the last thing I'm going to say is that, you guys heard me say this before, I am so proud of this department. So proud of the work that we do in this department. With this alignment bill, I am looking forward to the future. I am hopeful it's going to make us better than we are today. We're pretty darn good, but we're going to get a lot better. So I'm hopeful, I'm excited, fully behind it, and it's just going to make us a better system. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
What can we do to help support this process, discussion?
I think, people have come to you guys as board members with questions. Just sharing kind of what I shared today. I think those are good talking points too.
Can you share those points with us?
Yes. Yeah. Come on, Larry. I know you got one in you.
Well, Sam, I haven't had a chance to read all the pages. I know this is happening in the consolidation of some of the, like the HHS consolidation, and these questions are arising. Does the bill cover how the new aligned agencies will our board of corrections be done away with? Is that covered in the bill, or how those boards are going to reorganize? There's probably a board for each of those departments that's coming together.
Yes. So Larry, the Board of Corrections is not changing. There's no language in that, but the boards that the directors report to now will become advisory boards. So they will no longer report to them in an official capacity. They will report to the DOC. But they still remain advisory as a local resource, obviously to, share ideas, things like that, but they can remain in advisory capacity.
Okay.
You kind of cut out.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Yep, no problem.
Any other questions?
You guys are letting get me off easy today.
Thank you.
Thank
Don't
you.
feel bad for you.
Appreciate it. Yeah, you're trying to get me off the website. Oh my God. Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, I'd like to call Mr. Savala for the physician assistant administrative rule update.
So this is just what I call some conforming administrative rules. There was some legislation last year, House File 803, that dealt with physician assistants, and what it did is just clarified. So it just expanded what they can do in their current scope of practice, with which the law had said physicians could do. So this House File basically directed a lot of executive branch agencies, including us, to change anytime the word physician was in your administrative rules to add physician assistant next to it. So it's just kind of a technical cleanup. So that's the administrative rule that you have in front of you. We did have a public hearing, no one showed up, and no comments received. So that's why I said it's really just kind of a conforming set of administrative rules. It's really non-con, and it was approved by the legislature. But we, along with about 10 other executive branch agencies, just didn't really need to go with our administrative rules and make that smaller. So, any questions?
sense.
Anybody? Larry,
We need to.
Joanna, can you ask Larry and Denise?
Larry and Denise, did you have any questions?
This is an action item, so I'll be a vote.
Yeah.
I guess hearing no questions, would anybody
I'll
make
make
a
a
motion?
motion.
All right. Second. Having a motion and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right.
Thank you.
It's been approved, thanks. All right, Steve, you're up.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As you remember from our meeting back in, I believe in September, we did put forth a status quo budget to the governor. Through that time to now, basically, or through the end of the calendar year, we had discussions with the governor's office and Department of Management on some of our needs of what those are. Some of them got brought forth, some of them didn't, but we feel like we got a pretty good fair shake as far as what's in the governor's recommendations at this point in time. Before I kind of go through it, just a reminder that this has to pass through the legislative process. We do have appropriation subcommittee meetings scheduled for later in the month of February with the House and the Senate. So we'll have those pitches and hopefully move forward with at least as much, if not more money. So I'll kind of walk through the different areas that they funded at this point in time. So the spreadsheet kind of left to right, FY 2023 total, that's what we had as far as status quo that would have came from the previous year or the year that we're in right now. That first column is to distribute the remaining amount of our $10 million that we had originally gotten back in FY 22 to disperse throughout our agency, $243,797. So in the governor's recommendation, that's being put into pharmacy at Oakdale to help fund our hepatitis C treatment. And you'll see another line a little further to the right that's also going to do that. So in total, they're going to fund about $1 million. So that's a portion of it. The next column is a general increase of almost $11.9 million. That's being put in the department-wide duties, which that's an area that we can then disperse to fill needs in our department, both the CBCs and the institutions, as far as helping to fund such things as inflationary increases, salary increases, and such. In the past, that number actually has increased a little bit through the legislative process, so we're hopeful that may follow that same path. The next column is our institution inflation increase for utilities. We had actually requested monies for gasoline increases, food increases, and utilities for both the districts and the institutions. What got funded in the governor's budget was the utilities increases for the institutions. So about $1.8 million being spread amongst our nine institutions to help cover some of those costs that we're seeing increase over the past year or two. The next column is that remaining amount for hepatitis C to the pharmacy, $750,000. So like I said, between those two different numbers, we're almost $1 million. That will help us increase the numbers of IIs in our prisons that are Hep C positive, that can get treatment and hopefully get cured. The last column is OCIO fees appropriated, appropriation transferred to the OCIO. Currently, we're receiving those appropriations and then turning around and paying the OCIO for those services. It's just physically removing that so that step doesn't have to happen. And that money will get directly appropriated to the OCIO. We will not see that fee, so it should be a net neutral budget line for us, because that will reduce the expense as well. So when all that's taken into account, total increase the governor has requested is almost $14 million, $13.9 million, about 3.36%. So in an environment that's pretty much revenue neutral, we're happy that we got some help assistance. We're always hopeful that there may be a little bit more, but this is a good starting point. We're hoping that we can at least hold on to these funds. So, any questions on the general fund before we go on to the other funds? Okay.
Hey, Steve?
Yes. Yep.
If, one of them are consolidated into a different budget, consolidated around out there, without the whole budget,
So I believe that there is a realignment. There's a governor's recommendation, and there's a recommendation after if alignment would pass the process. I don't think that that necessarily affects the Department of Corrections per se, as far as what those amounts that are appropriated would be. I haven't seen anything different. There is something for the Board of Parole that is different with that, but I haven't seen anything for the Department of Corrections that those amounts would change.
Okay, so financially, we're not going to, we should be okay as far as the foundation of what you're saying.
Correct. And we know if the realignment does occur, there are going to be some initial costs. Correct, 100%, 100% accurate. I was just going to add that there may be some implementation costs that we have to, if the alignment does go through the process and gets passed, there's definitely some changes that would occur in how the districts would operate as far as their budgets being entered and their financials and their payroll. All that's being done independently currently. So some of those things may change, and we may see some implementation costs that we'll have to figure out and find monies for. But I wouldn't anticipate those are going to be huge. It's going to be more the learning curve and the short amount of time that we'll have to react more so than additional costs.
Okay.
Yep. So if there's no other further questions on the general fund, I'll move on to the second page, which is the RIF, the Rebuild Iowa Infrastructure Fund, and the Technology Reinvestment Fund requests that have been recommended by the governor. So in the Rebuild Iowa Infrastructure Fund, of course, that is for infrastructure purposes. The three things that have been identified in our requests, institution body scanners. This would put 5 additional scanners at our institutions to scan our people coming in and out of our facilities. Right now, I believe that those are being used for our workers going in and out, more so than visitors, but we are open to possibly looking at that as well, having those used for those purposes. The second item is a Mount Pleasant apprenticeship building. Adds a building at Mount Pleasant to be funded and help with our overall apprenticeship program at some of those things. $2.8 million for IMCC electrical grid service upgrades at North Edition at Oakdale. So those are the three things totaling almost $4.9 million. So we're happy with those amounts. We do have a number of other projects that we do have on our list that will continue to move forward and request, but this is a good starting point. We know that these funds also are maybe not receiving as much funding as they have in the past, so to get something on these was exciting for us that we're still being included and being looked at in these capacities. Yep, go ahead.
Is the Mount Pleasant, the apprenticeship building, is that going to be a new building? Because aren't there empty buildings on that property, or has that been split up?
There are, and most of those are outside the fence, so this would be built inside the fence that our population can use, I guess, more easily, and not be just for those outs workers that are in those buildings. Because we are existingly using some of the outside buildings, but not all of them. So yeah, there are buildings that are vacant, not being used currently at Mount Pleasant, but they're not in the spot in the right place. So.
I'd like to follow that up. Prisons weren't built to educate people in the past. They're there to collect people up. With the reforms going forward with Second Chance Fell, we've been able to see such what I was on for Rocket City, Fort Ivy, online and other facilities. And now other colleges are going to be jumping into the ship. Is there thinking about long-term planning for educational training space in other facilities, including Fort Ivy and others?
I would definitely say that would be on our horizon, absolutely. This would be a starting point, but we would, as we kind of move forward, that would definitely be in our.
So I know there's a vacant spot in Fort Dodge that's available for a new facility for additional training space. I know the problem is facing it.
Right. Yeah, no, I would completely agree. We would use this as a jumping board, I guess, or a diving board to hopefully come back into those other institutions as well.
This apprenticeship building, will it house the clients also, or will it just be just for the apprenticeship?
Just a training building, so that it's not a living unit per se. It's just to physically train. And What the capacity of that would be is going to be as we move forward, what's in need as far as jobs, what jobs are out there that we need to fill, and try to get our workers, our population into those jobs so that when they leave, of course, that there's opportunities for them. We don't want to train them in something that there's not going to be opportunities for. So that may be an ever-evolving type of thing where it may start out with welding or something like that, and it may evolve into something else down the road. So, but yeah, there would be classroom space and then probably some actual hands-on types of things in that building as well.
But right now, you haven't identified the hands-on.
I don't know that it's been completely identified. You know, some of, like I said, is dependent on what's needed in that area and for our workers. Also, if we've got a partner in the community that wants to come in and participate as well. So, yeah.
Question I have is, the company that's gonna build this apprenticeship building, is it gonna be someone, within the Department of Corrections? Because I know in Newton they had the inmates there building homes, and so is it possible to have some of the inmates come in and help build the building?
We'd have to look at that. I know that there's specific rules on dollar amounts that you can't exceed on some of these projects. Most likely, this would be outside of those ranges, and it probably would have to be scoped out through Department of Administrative Services and done through an RFP process. But if there's opportunities to use our folks and their skills, we would, and it's legal, we would definitely look to those opportunities. So the second piece of this is our technology reinvestment fund, and there's two requests that were funded or recommended for funding in the governor's request as well. The camera system upgrades. If you remember right, we have $1 million in the current year that we have for camera upgrades. This will just add to that and hopefully get some more of our facilities where we can get those technologies updated and more current. We have several places that are using analog cameras, get them to a digital format where the integrity of the feed is stronger and more resolute, so you can actually see what's occurring and use those better for investigations. The second piece is institution body cameras, $325,000 for that. We have a number of facilities that already have those in existence, some that are in the process of doing it. This will allow that to happen. And if there's a need for additional ones at other locations, we would look at that as well. But it's to bolster we know it works. We know it's a good mechanism to be able to help with our safety and security. So we definitely thought that was something that could benefit us. So we did put that forward. And once again, there's a number of projects that are below the line here that we'll continue to request funding for. There's opportunities this year or in the future. We'll continue to move those forward.
Thank you. Any questions?
Larry, did you have any questions?
I do not have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, I'd like to call Nick Crawford to go over the Board of Corrections correspondence policy as well as the legislative update.
Thank you. Good morning. So I'll start off with the Board of Corrections correspondence policy approval. Several weeks ago, Joanna would have sent out the correspondence policy so you all have an opportunity to take a look at it. Every 3 years, we have to go through and review all of our policies, kind of in a cycle, basically. This is part of that. We didn't make any changes to the policy during that review. So we just have to have you all approve it. Another action item for you today. If you have any questions, happy to answer them, but we haven't changed policy from previous years. So.
I think it was explained well last time.
All right, a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second? Second. Thank you. All those in, Larry and
Aye.
Aye.
Right. Thank you. The correspondence policy is approved.
right, so I will move into the legislative update. Director Skinner obviously covered one of our biggest action items for this legislative session at the beginning. Steve talked through our budget numbers, RIF and TRF requests. Just to kind of give you all an idea of where the governor's alignment bill stands right now. It was introduced officially yesterday in the House. It has been assigned to the State Government Committee. There is now a 7-member subcommittee that's been assigned to kind of take the first crack at that bill. There's no date scheduled yet for a vote. As you can imagine with a bill that somewhere around 1,600 pages, it may take them just a little bit longer to process that and get through the necessary review that they all like to take. But I will tell you that now that the bill's been introduced, Director Skinner and I are going to be across the street pretty regularly talking about what we feel are the benefits of this alignment and support of the governor's bill. So that's kind of where that stands right now in the legislative process. Just a couple of housekeeping items so you're all aware. There's been a change this year from previous years. Director Skinner will actually be providing 2 separate budget presentations to the legislature. Over the last several years, she has just been providing an update to the House Justice Systems Appropriations Committee. This year, she has been asked to present to both. Typically, that's a joint committee between the Senate and the House, but they've since split that up a little bit, at least in their administrative process. So we're actually working with them right now to schedule the House meeting. February 20th is the tentative date for that out at ICIW. A lot of the members that are on the House Justice Systems Approach Committee now are all new. So we have a brand new chair. As you know, Representative Worthen, who was in that position for about 7 years, retired at the end of the last legislative session. We now have a new chair. His name's Brian Mosey, Representative Brian Mosey. He represents the Bondurant, Altoona area. We've built a great relationship with him up to this point. We've had an opportunity to take him out to a couple of our facilities prior to the legislative session starting. We've just been really happy with his interest and the help that he wants to provide to the department. So we'll be doing that at the end of this month. And then the next day, February 21st, is the tentative date that we have scheduled for Director Skinner's presentation to the Senate Subcommittee on Justice Systems Appropriations. That'll just be over at the Capitol. The reason I say tentative, their schedules can be pretty erratic sometimes when it comes to the bills that come before the legislature when debate gets scheduled. So if any of that changes, we'll certainly make that known. But February 20th, February 21st is what we have scheduled. A couple other updates on the makeup of the committees that really have an impact on what our operations are. The House Judiciary Committee still has Representative Steve Holt as the chair. He's been a great partner with us over the years. The House Public Safety Committee now has a new chair, which is again another committee that we work very closely with through the legislative process. Representative Phil Thompson is now the chair of that committee. Everything has stayed the same on the Senate side, no changes there. One last thing, and this is just so you all are aware. I know I mentioned this last year, but I think this is something nice to just keep on the radar. At first funnel week, when all the bills, if they're not passed out of either a House committee or a Senate committee, they can't make it through the rest of the legislative session. That date is March 3rd this year. So that's when those bills must be passed. Moving into some of the legislation that we're following closely outside of the governor's alignment bill and our budget bill as well. In years past, this is actually a piece of legislation that's come up several years now. It's HSB 55, SSB 1004 this year, but it is a probation reform bill. If you all recall last year, this is something that came up. It has specifically to do with the creation of a credit system, basically within probation. We have made our concerns with that bill very clear, and we'll continue to do so. That has passed through subcommittee in both chambers. It has not come up in a committee meeting yet, but we will be monitoring that very closely, as it does have a significant impact on This is SF-14, another bill that has come up in years past, but it would bring back the capital murder charge, so essentially the death penalty. This has only been introduced in the Senate at this point. There's no subcommittee meeting scheduled at this time, but again, that would have a significant impact on our operations, so that's another piece of legislation that we're watching closely. There's also a number of bills, and I'm not going to go through all of them because there's quite a few, but there's several bills relating to criminal penalties and mandatory minimums that we're also watching very closely. Just the impacts that those can potentially have on our overall prison population, and also our budgeting concerns. As you know, it's not cheap to house inmates inside of the prison, so we have to watch those things very closely as they move through the process and ensure that we're educating legislators so they know when they're making that decision, hey, this could potentially have a financial impact on our operations. We need to make sure that we're funding at a level that makes sense in relation to that. There's a number of other governor priority bills that are moving through the legislature right now. One that we're watching closely, and this is one that she had mentioned during her Commission on the State address, relates to penalties and crimes associated with fentanyl and the opioid crisis. And again, that's another one that we're watching closely because it does have an impact on our operations. That has been assigned to a House subcommittee, and there's actually a subcommittee meeting scheduled today in the Senate on that bill. So we'll just monitor that as it moves through the process. Yesterday, this is an interesting piece of legislation that has come up. Senator Reitman had introduced a bill that has to do with our handling of legal mail inside of our prisons. As you all know, there has been an issue that we have come across inside of our facilities when it relates to the introduction of K2, a synthetic marijuana, synthetic drug that can infiltrate the prison system through mail, essentially. That is the entire reason why we started that scanning process through the vendor Pigeonly, and we've seen great success with that program. I'm very, very happy with how that's worked. This bill relates specifically to legal mail, because when it comes to legal mail or confidential mail, we're extremely limited when it comes to what we can look at, what we can scan, how we can inspect that, because that mail is between typically an attorney and their client inside of the this bill would give some clarity on what we're able to do through our administrative rules when it comes to actually inspecting that mail and ensuring that this drug K2 and any other contraband are not introduced into our correctional system. Because at the end of the day, our job as DOC is to ensure that inside of our facilities everybody's safe. Our staff, the inmates, everybody. And this bill would certainly help with that. So we're following that very, very closely. It passed out of subcommittee yesterday. And then finally, another governor's bill, HSB 82, all relates back to apprenticeships. And as we know as a department and studies that we have conducted, apprenticeships have an incredible impact on our recidivism rate and the ability for inmates to re-enter society and become productive members of society. Well, this bill, the governor's apprenticeship bill, would establish an Iowa Office of Apprenticeship and an Iowa Apprenticeship Council. So I've had a couple of conversations with our apprenticeship coordinator, Dane Selected, and this would be a really good thing for the department. Reason being is the way the process works now, if we want to start a new apprenticeship program in our institutions, we have to go to the federal government and get it approved through the Federal Labor Bureau. Well, this would shift that approval back to the state of Iowa through this Iowa Office of Apprenticeship. And then that council would be made up of a number of different stakeholders throughout the state. It's still all being fleshed out who that would be, what the makeup would look like, but I think it would be a great opportunity for the department to have somebody as part of that, because it does have such a profound impact on our population.
What's that bill number?
HSB 82. It was introduced just within the last couple of days. So it's that's all I've got. There's a lot more. The governor's education bill took up a lot of time over the first couple of weeks, so now there's been a dash over the last week and a half to really start introducing a number of bills. So there's a lot on the docket. Thank you. Any questions? I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Nick. This is Denise on the phone. Can you re-clarify what that meeting is with
Yeah, absolutely. So that's going to be over in Mitchellville, again, tentatively, at the Iowa Correctional Institute for Women.
Oh, okay.
Yep, we're going to hold it in one of the training rooms there.
Okay, thank
Probably
you.
in the morning.
It's actually going to be in the afternoon, again, tentatively,
Yeah.
3:30, debate schedule, but tentatively it's 3:30 on the 20th. The reason we're doing it that way, as most of you know, we have almost an entirely new House Committee on Justice Systems, so it's a really good opportunity. We don't really get all of them in the same room at one time. It's pretty tough to do. So we have that chance now, so following the meeting, we're going to do a tour of the facility so everybody can go and take a look and really understand where those taxpayer dollars are going.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, since we talked about we've already approved the 2023 schedule, we're at the point in the meeting where we'll take public comments. As is our practice, we are happy to hear from anybody who has comments. We will not respond at the meeting. However, the department and the board will attempt to respond to your concerns by the time the next meeting, we have the next meeting. So we're not sure how many comments there are today, but just as a reminder, we'd like to keep your comments around 2 minutes or less. And I believe Nick will kind of keep track of that.
Hold on.
Hey, you're cutting off just a little bit. I'm not sure how far away from the phone you are, but if you could move a little closer, then if there are any public comments, if we could have those people come close to the phone, that would be appreciated as well.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that reminder, Larry. All right, do we have any comments at this point? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to discussion between the board members. Larry, Denise, any further discussion?
Yeah, I have nothing at this time.
He said he has nothing at this time.
Oh,
I have something. I just want to, again, I thank everyone, thank the Department of Corrections. I think it's going to be awesome. It's going to be a positive for the verge, if we can get the verge to go through the legislation. I think it'll be awesome because being on one accord, you know, my wife works in the district, first district, and it'd be nice to be on one accord with everyone. And the apprenticeship program, I think, is an awesome situation to stop the clients from coming back and forth in, giving them a career to do something outside of whatever they did to get inside the institutions. So I think this year, so far, it sounds like everything is going to be going well. I like that they're going to be building a new building at Mount Pleasant, you know, having a place that you can go just for your training, you know, because I was wondering if the clients would be living there too, and I was thinking like, do you want to live at your job? So that's the reason
Some of
why I
us
asked
do.
that question. Do you want to live at your job? I know in other countries, people are living at their jobs, you know. So it's nice to be able to be on campus and be able to work and then go back and, you know, and gives you something to have the initiative to want to do, you know. So I thank God for that. And so everything I've heard today was awesome, and I'm happy to be here, and Happy New Year's to everyone that's here today. All the board members, Denise and Larry, I'm listening to you. I normally know you normally ask more questions, but I know that you're in Florida enjoying the sun, so we appreciate you taking the time out to even just be here by phone, both you and Denise. I know you're in Washington, D.C., Denise. So we thank you for that. And that's all I have for today.
Any other comments? All right, hearing none, can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So motion.
Second. Thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed?
Aye.
All right, we'll adjourn the February meeting and see you.
Oh, and March. We're gonna meet in March. Joanna?
I guess